Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Workbench. Today on the roster is my scratch built Daisy. Now, I know the channel has been kind of flooded with my Workbench videos, but what can I say? I love making my custom models. Now, Daisy might seem like a bit of an odd character to choose from, especially since I tend to lean into more Season 1 focused characters, but I've been itching to move on to some Season 2 characters. And Daisy has always had a soft spot for me. It just so happened that the Unlucky Tugs video came out on Daisy as I was building her, so good or bad timing, you tell me. Anyway, let's move on. Daisy's ERTL model is actually quite nice. Released in 1993, the model had all of the correct detailing and a fairly nice face. My only issue with her is the height and how low she is to the ground, but overall a solid model for any collection. As to why I made my own, well, I felt I could create a closer resemblance to the original prop, and I wanted to give it a go. So, buckle in as I show you how I built her. The model was fully made out of white card and had two pieces cut for the base, one larger and one smaller. This created the base for the chassis and the body. One tip I will give is to make the chassis first on models like these. Then you can work around that to make the body. Moving wheels and all of that can be tricky to navigate, so do the hard work first. For the wheels, I had an old mail van in my parts box that was pretty beaten up. However, its wheels and bogeys were perfect to take for Daisy, so I took them apart and used them. I trimmed down the plastic on the edges a little bit, but otherwise they stayed unchanged. Now, the mail van has the holders for the wheels molded onto the floor, so I cut them off so the wheels could sit in one piece and be able to be removed from Daisy. Rest in peace, mail van. To spice things up a bit, I made moving bogeys for Daisy. These were built up with card pieces around the wheels, and a paper straw was cut and glued onto the top. This would go through the running board and allow the bogey to move. Simple, but effective. All assembled, it rolled quite nicely and sat at a good height. Next was the body. I cut another piece for the base of the body and cut holes in it so the bogeys could poke through. Then I marked and cut out the sides of her body and drew in the windows. To go the extra mile, I actually cut them out rather than painting them like my older models, as Daisy has a lot of windows. It looks better too, as it's one of her main features. The front pieces were also marked up and cut, and the pieces were glued onto the base. For anyone asking about how I size reference these models, I loosely use references from the show and rough heights of the ERTL models to get a similar proportion. Sometimes they can be a little bit off, but as long as they look mostly correct, I'm fine with that. Before I moved on, I used grey paint to fill the inside as I wouldn't have access to it later. And the roof, like Toby, used a thin paper towel roll cut into size, with smaller sloping parts at the front and rear. These were all glued down and held with tape. I was surprised at actually how well the roof went on. Usually there's some warping, but this all went pretty smoothly. Now, onto details. I cut strips of card and glued them onto the roof to create the roof detail, and hole punched card for the rounded parts. Painting is always my favourite part, and I went and covered the whole chassis in black. I kept this separate for ease of painting so I didn't have to worry about messing up. The body was primed with white paint, and a custom mixed green went on next. I usually like to keep all of my models in the same shades, but Daisy I felt deserved her own bright green to help differentiate herself from the others. So in thin coats I built it up, being careful not to mess with the windows. After about 4 thin coats, it looked quite nice, and assembled with the chassis, it looked really good. The roof was taped off and painted grey, and then I could start doing the lining. I really hate lining, but I went through the pain of doing all 3 stripes around the whole model. It took a long time, but it was worth it in the end. A little tip here on how I get clean lines with acrylic paint. When taping over the area, use a coat of your base color. In this case, it's green. So there's no bleeding when you put the new color on top. It helps seal down the tape and gives your model a bit of a smoother finish. Surprisingly, it turned out pretty good. It had me stressing. Next was the other painted details like doors and making the buffer beams. Cut with thinner card, and the buffers made from hole punch cardboard and toothpicks. That and the coupling were made and fitted to the body. Once painted red, they looked great. Daisy has this detailing in her windows, and I wanted to try and replicate it, so I painstakingly cut thin lines of paper and painted them in silver. These were fitted inside by pushing them through the opposite window. It took a little bit to get them right, but I think it was worth it in the end. Finally, the last details could be fitted. Lamps were made from circles, cut and painted white, and glued on. After fully drying, 2 thin coats of gloss varnish were painted over the entire body. I decided to keep the chassis matte last minute, and I actually really like it a lot. It helps differentiate the body in the chassis. Faces were made like my others in Adobe Illustrator, but this time I made sure to make multiple expressions. Now she can be happy, angry, or smiling for whichever I need. And with that, she was pretty much complete. This took a lot of time and detail work, but I honestly think she's my best model yet. For being my first diesel, I really enjoyed making her and adding all of the extra details like moving bogeys and open windows. Now I just need to make an Elsbridge set to finish it off, don't I? My models are slowly turning from ERTLs to prop replicas, and it's really a lot of fun sharing it all with you. Let me know what characters you guys would like to see next. Hi everyone, and thanks for watching. This was probably my most complex and comprehensive how-to video, but I'm glad I got it out. I don't really have any plans at the moment for what's coming on the channel, but I'm sure whatever it will be soon. So thanks everyone, have a good day,